Welcome to the Feature Briefing Spring 2025, one day after the release of Service Pack 21. We are happy to have you with us. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Welcome also from my side. I will guide you through the individual presentations today and also coordinate your questions that you send via chat or email. Enjoy the CODESYS Feature Briefing.
First of all, I'd like to mention the date of the next feature briefing. It will take place on October 15. This feature briefing will be recorded and will be available to you or your colleagues afterwards. The presentations have been pre-recorded, so the times we give in the agenda on the next slides are fairly accurate. Directly after my introduction, we will start with the content and show you the new developments around CODESYS and our agenda for the coming months. You are very welcome to send us questions. As last time, you can either ask them via the YouTube chat. However, this requires your own YouTube channel and is also publicly visible. Alternatively, you have the option of sending us an email at featurebriefing@codesys.com. This is not public. Please always give us the context of your question so that we know what you are referring to. We will either answer you directly or, especially if we think it is a question of general interest, we will answer it in the plenary session at the end of the event. If we need to find out more and we need more time to answer, we will write to you in the next few days. Here is the agenda. I will not read it out in detail. The first half will take us around about half an hour and we'll start with the development system. Then the second part will take about 1 hour and finally end with CODESYS Go, our new engineering platform which is currently under development. A note on upcoming releases: Service Pack 21 is available to you very recently. After that there will be a new Service Pack 22 in about a year's time. There will be patches for CODESYS Essentials throughout the year. In April, another one on Service Pack 20, then we will focus on Service Pack 21. We can also patch older versions on request. There are numerous releases on the add-ons every month. We publish which components are due for new versions and when on our website at the given address. There on the neighboring page you will find information on the life cycle of our products. I already presented this to you at the last feature briefing, but it might be useful to take another quick look at it. We have defined phases for our products. It starts with the definition and development. For you as a customer, the product phase is of particular interest. Depending on maturity, there are regular improvements and bug fixes. At the beginning, more frequently with young products. With more mature products, the frequency generally decreases. If it becomes apparent that the product cannot be continued for much longer, it is moved to the service phase. The reasons for this may be economic considerations, for example because a product is less in demand, or practical ones, for example because the appropriate hardware is no longer available. In the service phase, we no longer maintain the product on our own initiative, but only make adjustments and changes at the customer's request and for a fee. During this time, it is only available to existing customers who are instructed not to use it in new projects and to look for an alternative solution. At the end of the service phase, the product is finally discontinued. That means it is withdrawn from the market. Finally, a few words on the Cyber Resilience Act. I assume that you are also concerned with this topic. You are therefore certainly aware that it is a European law to which we as CODESYS are subject, and all those who produce affected products in the European Union or supply them to the European market. We are dealing with this very actively and are holding discussions with our larger customers. We feel well prepared for our flagship product version 3, as we have established a good security process over the years, which we intend to have certified this year in accordance with IEC 6244341. Further details are still to be worked out, and I will keep you regularly informed here. As far as our legacy product, CODESYS version 2.3 is concerned, we have to be clear that it was not implemented in accordance with the guidelines of the Cyber Resilience Act and cannot be extended accordingly when security was not yet as advanced. A subsequent enhancement fails simply because of the increased hardware requirements. Encrypted communication, to name one example, simply cannot be implemented on the often low-performance controller hardware of that time. If you would like to continue using version 2.3 after the deadline and are not yet in contact with us, please get in touch with your contact person in our sales department to explore the possibilities. So far the general introduction. Please enjoy the upcoming presentations.
Before we start with the presentations, just one last piece of information. As part of the current feature briefing, you again have the opportunity to give us your opinion on various topics. We have prepared a survey for this purpose, which you can access via the link in the chat, the video description, and via the displayed QR code. You will be able to answer some questions better after the individual presentations. We look forward to your active participation in the survey. So now we're really getting started. Enjoy the CODESYS Feature Briefing.
Hi, my name is Christoph Brachmann. I'm the product manager of the CODESYS development system and the automation platform.
Let's take a closer look at what's new. In the release of the CODESYS installer version 2.4, we have focused on improving usability to enhance the overall user experience. During installation, the option to create separate repositories is now more visible. This allows users to set up independent installations, ensuring that different versions or configurations do not interfere with each other. The installation path can now be accessed directly from the main interface, making navigation to the installation folder easier. The CODESYS installer now supports self-updates. When a new version is available, users will be notified and can choose to install immediately, be reminded later, or skip the update. A new add-on filter has been introduced in the browse list, allowing users to filter add-ons by multiple tags, making it easier to find the required extensions. In the CODESYS development system version 3.5 Service Pack 21, the license manager now supports the network license server. The graphical user interface has been updated to better handle network licenses. Licenses can now be activated both online and offline. Users can view an overview of all existing licenses and their expiration dates. Usability has been further improved for a more seamless experience. In the next few slides, I will go over the changes and improvements to the language editors. In LDFBD version 4.6, released in January 2025, and CFC version 4.5, planned for Q2 2025, several bug fixes have been implemented. The new version of CODESYS SFC version 4.5 will be released in Q3 2025, featuring several usability improvements and bug fixes to enhance the user experience. Automatic adoption of small input fields. Input fields now adjust automatically for better visibility and ease of use. Enable horizontal scrolling in the editor window. This makes it easier to navigate wide content within the editor. Direct jump from embedded action to a calling step. Users can now quickly jump from an embedded action directly to the calling step. Our CODESYS ladder editor version 1.2 will be released in Q2 2025, introducing a major improvement. Currently, the ladder editor follows a different execution order within a single network compared to LDFBD. This can sometimes lead to unexpected behavior when working across different editors. Starting with CODESYS ladder version 1.2, the execution order will be fully aligned with the well-known CODESYS LD-FBD. What does this mean for you? You can now import projects or copy and paste networks from LD-FBD into ladder version 1.2 without any breaking changes. When updating an older ladder version to version 1.2, a breaking change may occur, depending on the complexity of the network. This improvement ensures a more consistent and predictable workflow when working with ladder editors. To support you in updating your existing ladder projects to CODESYS ladder version 1.2, we have introduced several enhancements to ensure a smooth transition. First of all, we optimized the execution order calculation. Only the network you are actively working on will be processed, improving performance. Full control over the execution order. You can decide whether to adopt the new execution order or keep the existing one. To assist with the transition, we have introduced a new ladder category in the message box. The system automatically checks the execution order of your ladder networks. If necessary, you will receive an alert highlighting the relevant networks. You can then choose to ignore the warning or make adjustments. Visual markers will highlight affected ladder networks, making them easy to identify. What we don't do. Libraries containing CODESYS ladder code within your repository will be ignored. Therefore, no warning will be issued for these libraries. With these improvements, we ensure that you can transition your ladder projects efficiently and with full flexibility. Now, let's take a look at the improvements in the scripting interface. We are introducing a new scripting interface add-on with support for IronPython 3. This change is necessary because there are too many incompatibilities between IronPython 2.7 and IronPython 3. So moving to a newer version is essential. So what does it mean for you? The current scripting add-on using IronPython 2.7 will still be available, and the new IronPython 3 add-on can be installed in parallel. Installing both add-ons in parallel allows for a smooth migration to IronPython 3. Some add-ons such as Git and Recipes will require new versions to remain compatible with IronPython 3. The old scripting add-on will eventually be discontinued, so we strongly recommend that users begin migrating their scripts as soon as possible. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your feedback.
Thanks, Christoph Brachmann. Stay tuned for the next presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Markus Haberstock and I work in the documentation department. In my presentation today, I show you the latest innovations in the area of documentation and CODESYS help. Be excited.
Today, I would like to inform you about two changes regarding the offline help and the current status of the CODESYS examples. First, the offline help. In previous feature briefings, I have already informed you that we will no longer support the CHM format. With Service Pack 21, the CODESYS CHM viewer will be removed from the setup, so you will no longer be able to open CHM files via the CODESYS user interface. If you are still installing packages with old CHM help files, you can open the installation directory of these help files in the Windows File Explorer. The Help for Third-Party Packages command is available for this purpose. However, this command is only active if CHM files are actually installed. In the future, with Service Pack 21, a new function will be available for integrating additional help pages into the CODESYS offline help in HTML5 format. This allows you to integrate new help chapters at any point in the offline help. Searching and language switching are also supported. Here is an example of an additional help. In this example, we have added an additional help page including a few subpages to the CODESYS offline help. Switching the language is also possible. Furthermore, you can add the new help to the content overview page. You can find a detailed description of this in the help for Service Pack 21. Now to the CODESYS examples. We started documenting all CODESYS sample projects in the help portal and storing the examples on the deployment server a good year ago. The examples that were originally stored in the CODESYS Forge are now ready on the deployment server and can therefore be installed via the help page or directly via the CODESYS installer. To do this, go to Search under Add-ons and set the filter to Examples. All available example packages will then be displayed. We will convert the examples that are offered in the store or contained in add-ons into packages this year, so that we have a consistent and standardized storage format. These were the new features from the documentation.
Good to know, Markus Haberstock. Now, the next one.
Hello, my name is Bernhard Reiter. As product manager, I will inform you about the current developments in the areas of the compiler, the professional developer edition, and our communication protocols.
I will discuss two new compiler features in the following, which will be released with the upcoming Service Pack 21 version. Of course, more than just these two features will be available, and for a complete overview of all new compiler functionalities, please also refer to my feature briefing recording from the presentation in the fall of last year. The first feature I want to talk about is the possibility to use the latest CODESYS version to develop libraries which are still compatible to an older version. So for example, if you created a library with Service Pack 17 and you want to be able to edit it on with the latest CODESYS version to profit from all bug fixes and performance improvements done in the compiler, but also in the overall engineering system, for example, then this has become easier now with the new version. Expert users were already able to do this, and basically you need to be careful of how you treat and set the profile of the project and also which compiler version you use in the project. Because this new behavior or this new feature is not generally applicable to all kinds of libraries, especially if they contain advanced objects like visualizations or motion objects, for example, you need to explicitly enable this feature for your library. And it works best if your library consists mostly of structured text or maybe ladder or other graphical languages without any kind of special object as described previously. You can enable this setting in the project information, and it will usually tell you exactly for which version you will keep the compatibility. So as in this lower screenshot here, it will tell you that you can enforce project compatibility with like the profile name which is set in the project. In this example, it was Service Pack 21, but it could also then say for your existing library Service Pack 17, for example. Once this option is active, CODESYS changes behavior in a few places. So for example, it will be a lot more careful to not accidentally upgrade your storage profile or profile of the project and make it incompatible with the old version while doing that. So dialogues will appear to inform you that you want a setting, but a certain operation will change this, and you have now the possibility to also like suppress this dialog and not have it appear several times when editing the project. The other bigger change is in regard to the compiler version. As you can see in the upper screenshot, we enabled the selection of the compiler version in case you activated this compatibility option for the project. By default, this compiler version selection is not active anymore in CODESYS. And also, if it becomes active, you can see that we removed all intermediate versions like patches from this list, and the list only starts at Service Pack 16. What effectively happens is that you select the language version and so the language features which are available in your project by the compiler. The compiler version used in the project will always be the latest one available in this CODESYS installation, but this compiler version, the latest version, knows what kind of features are available in earlier versions or are not yet implemented in those versions. So if you use a new language feature, like for example new operators, then the compiler will inform you that Service Pack 17 does not yet have this feature and give the user a nice warning and error reporting to help him to solve this case. Eventually, I want to say that please be aware that while this is a convenience feature allowing you to make it easier to edit and use the latest engineering version to work on your library, our recommendation still is to eventually open this library like in the desired version, like as Service Pack 17, and do checks like compiler error checks and also the creation of the compiled library in that old version, because still this is the only way we can absolutely guarantee that there will be not introduced any kind of incompatibilities for these older versions. So this is like a convenience engineering feature, but does not replace the need to then actually use the desired version of the library compatibility to create a final library with it. The second topic I want to talk about is that the ISC 61131-3 4th edition will be released this year. It includes new compiler features and accordingly also new keywords which did not exist in previous versions of the standard. CODESYS will not immediately with Service Pack 21 support these new features of this 4th edition, but still we decided to already reserve the new keywords to be sure that we are then able to implement these features in the future without having to create too big of a compatibility issue with existing projects. You can see here in the presentation a list of keywords we decided to reserve, and this effectively means that, for example, if you call the variable property _set in your project, with Service Pack 21, you would now receive an error message indicating that this is a reserved keyword, and you would need to rename your variable to compile your project again. We decided to do this as a compiler error, even though it might create compatibility issues in existing projects, because in none of the CODESYS libraries, test projects or example projects, we did not encounter any case there's some variable or anything did use one of these reserved names, and so we had no issues in-house at all to activate this feature. So this led us to assume that it will also not be a compatibility issue for our customers, and that it is safe to enable it as a new compiler error. These were all new features I wanted to show. Thank you for your attention. For the Professional Developer Edition, our current developments can be summarized under the topic of continuous integration support. This means that for each individual tool of the Professional Developer Edition, we want to evaluate its usage inside of continuous integration workflows and to improve it and add missing features. For the static analysis, the next step is to support a common result format which can be understood by the different CI tools. We chose here the so-called serif format, which is called the Static Analysis Results Interchange format, and is developed by the OASIS Open organization. This tool has different levels of support depending on your CI system, but overall it gives you the possibility to have one common format for exporting the results of a static analysis run for a project and to interpret those results in a common machine understandable format, which is very important for these automated workflows. For the test manager, the next step is to improve the usage inside of command line workflows. So to add a scripting driver which allows to run the test scripts you created automatically, and to be able to do this in a non-UI or command line mode where it is not necessary to explicitly start the graphical interface of CODESYS for executing the test scripts. Of course, another important topic is the possibility to be able to have a human readable and understandable storage format for CODESYS projects. This is a requirement which exists already for a long time from our users, and development is underway currently. The first release is planned for the second quarter of this year as a version 0.9. We decided that it would be too early to already release the first official version, the 1.0, because we still want to work on improving the readability and understandability of the so-called file-based storage. And for this, further changes in the core of CODESYS are required, which are going to be released with Service Pack 22 next year. Also, we already want to be able to provide full support for the CODESYS Kit integration and the file-based storage when it is released initially. Still, we think it's important that our customers already get an early chance to have hands-on experience with this new project format and to also give us early on feedback and evaluate the integration into their workflows. But of course, since it is only a 0.9, we still have the possibility to make breaking changes between this version and the final release. So this pre-release version should really only be used for evaluation purposes. Using the file-based storage requires a professional developer edition license. So this project format is not available to all customers. Of course, this doesn't mean that in the future, every company who wants to use the file-based storage in the automated workflows or for better CI integration has to buy a professional developer edition license for every developer working with customer projects. Of course, it will still be possible to save a project stored in the file-based project format as a project archive or even convert it back to the binary file format so that users who do not have a professional developer edition license are able to use these projects and deploy them in the field or use them for maintenance purposes on customer side. So there will always be the possibility to have a lossless conversion between the binary project format and the new file-based storage format. This was the summary of our ongoing developments regarding the CI integration possibilities of the Professional Developer Edition tools. Thanks for your attention. Regarding the communication features, I want to talk briefly about OPC UA and DNP3. For OPC UA, our aim is for Service Pack 21 to reach the next level of the certifications for our OPC UA server. This means specifically the embedded 2017 UA server profile. The test for the certification already started in the fall of 2024, and now the test cases have been executed successfully, and we also fixed any bugs which were found during these tests. The final certification will not only require Service Pack 21, but also the release of the version 4.6 of the communication add-on, which is scheduled for April. New features regarding the OPC UA server are the support of data change filters and also the monitoring triggers, which are both demanded by the embedded 2017 profile. Additionally, we also included now the CODESYS alarms in the certification, which were so far not compliant in their behavior. This means that if you use the CODESYS alarm configuration and if you publish these alarms using the symbol set editor, then these published alarms on the OPC UA server will behave compliant according to the specification. Another topic we originally planned for releasing the Service Pack 21 is the OPC UA redundancy support. Here we specifically mean that if you have two controllers running in a redundant setup and one of the controller fails and a switchover occurs, then our OPC UA server should be able to also automatically switch over and keep itself synchronized on both controllers so that the clients only need to reconnect but have no additional setup work or data loss. This feature requires more work than we originally anticipated for, and so will now be delayed until Service Pack 22 for the release. The last feature I want to talk about is DNP3. Here we are aiming for completing the so-called Level 1 support for our outstation implementation. This specifically means that we extended to support all the data types required by the DMP3 specification, which are, for example, time and date types and frozen counters. And also we are adding new features like the unsolicited responses and events. The new version 2.0 is planned to be released at the end of the second quarter of this year. This was my quick overview of the communication features currently in development.
Great presentation, Bernhard Reiter. Stay tuned for the next one.
Hello, my name is Ulf Schünemann. I'm Product Manager for Application Technology. Now I'm telling you what's new in Application Technology. First, an addition to the Professional Developer Edition, the CODESYS Simulation Interface. The implementation is now complete. There will be a pre-release in April, which includes a demonstration package and is used for evaluation with pilot customers and getting support in simulation tools. Contact sales or support if you want access. The release is planned for the end of the year. It is an add-on in the Professional Developer Edition included in the license since March. It makes physical simulations of CODESYS-controlled machines more accurate by connecting them to controllers with the original machine applications. It's based on a research project, Software-Defined Manufacturing, funded by the German government. The basic simulation scenario is a simulation tool which creates and visualizes the simulation models and runs the simulation. The simulation model is a model of the machine, the workpieces, the material, the personnel, the environment, whatever. And a PLC connector connects this simulation model to a simulation PLC. And the simulation PLC is a soft PLC or actual controller with a simulation interface running the IEC application. The first three are not our product. Our product is the last part, the simulation PLC. A simulation may also include multiple PLCs. And these PLCs may run, for example, on the workstation of the application engineer or on some real-time platform or even the original PLC used for controlling the machine. The communication is done using OPC-UA PubSub, and the connection is established by an information model describing the simulation PLCs and their PubSub connections. This is hosted on an OPC-UA server, which might be a CODESYS control win. And the information is collected from all the different engineering systems with the respective projects. The setup in CODESYS is very easy. You insert the object simulation interface where you select whether you want to simulate all mapped signals or the entire I/O image. You set IP addresses for the simulation PLC and the simulation so that they can talk with each other, or you define multicast addresses. You set the PubSub IDs to be used, and then you do a normal download procedure by connecting with the simulation PLC, download and run. Finally, on the tab Simulation Broker, you select a CODESYS controller with an OPC-UA server function as the broker, and then you update the broker, which plays down the information model. In the simulation tool, you need to add a CODESYS PLC connector, connect with that broker, and read the registered simulation PLCs. Select the simulation PLC you want to connect to. The tool will read the IP address, the PubSub configuration, and the list of I/O signals. And then you map the I/O signals to the data points in your simulation and run the simulation against the prepared simulation PLC. Takeaways. The machine simulation with CODESYS as software in the loop becomes possible. It works for any application, any field bus, and any PLC. It is accurate through the original control logic and has a 5 millisecond round-trip time possible because of the use of PubSub communication. It's an easy setup. The application remains unchanged. You disable the simulation by a switch. You use a file-less import of the simulation interface into the simulation based on the OPC-UA information model. All of this is based on OPC-UA mechanisms. You need an OPC-UA-based connector in the simulation tool. That's the point. There are prototypes which we showed at the SPS fair last year, and further simulation tool providers are interested. Now, regarding the development system, I have to tell you something about libraries. There's an issue about updating rebranded libraries. Since SP19, there are new versions of libraries with vendor 3S Smart Software Solutions are successively rebranded to CODESYS. Updated libraries used in the user project, directly or indirectly, are updated automatically in SP20 and not updated in SP19, meaning don't automatically get improvements. Now, if an updated library is used by an add-on in the project, that is indirectly, and if that library in an add-on has new version relying on new features of the rebranded library, then like Ethernet IP 4.7 uses the new element collections 4.0, then in SP20 there's an automatic update of both, which is okay, but in SP19 only Ethernet IP is updated and there's no update of the element collections, meaning that you get a compile error. The remedy is to manually update the library resolution in the project. In SP19, in Library Manager, you open the placeholder dialog and you update the placeholder for element collections. You select the version 4.0 with the CODESYS vendor, which is offered automatically. Another thing, in the CODESYS base libraries, this is a library add-on with 6 libraries used in many libraries, mainly CAA successors. This is factored out from CODESYS as part of the setup modularization with regard to library landscape and was released last year. End of March, there's an update for 0.1, and it removes all dependencies to the old CAA libraries. It is needed for users of base libraries to become independent from CAA libraries. It cannot be combined with the CII FB Factory library in the same project. And the element collections library has been optimized with regarding to the hash tables. I have 2 news regarding CODESYS communication for you. CODESYS OPC-UA PubSub libraries have received an update in December last year. It contains OPC-UA conformant encoding of arrays and a stabilized publishing interval using the cycle count instead of the clock time. And in the middle of the year, there will be another update bringing you message security with signing and encryption. The CODESYS IIoT libraries will receive an update in April, providing you Azure IoT Hub Client with support for WebSocket proxies and a successor of the JSON utilities with optimizations based on iString of the string libraries instead of WString. And there's a new weather forecast library, which is a web-based successor of the old CA-based example. And there will be some maintenance of MQTT client, AWS IoT core client, and SNMP service. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ulf Schünemann. Now to the next exposure. Hallo, mein Name ist Martin Decker. Ich bin der Produktmanager für den CODESYS Automation Server. In today's feature briefing, you're gonna learn about the most recent automation server developments, about developments in the near future, and how you can benefit from these new developments and features in the automation server. A feature that has already been released with the last version of the automation server is the certificate management. The requirement was that there should be a simple and comprehensive solution in the automation server to give you an overview over all certificates of all connected PLCs and, for example, their expiration dates, their thumbprint, and further details. For this purpose, we added a new area security here in the automation server main menu, and in the menu entry device certificates, you will now find a list of all the certificates of the connected PLCs as well as the connected edge gateways, including informations like the device, the PLC or the gateway, the certificate is stored on, the thumbprint, the validity period, the use cases, if there are any, the certificate was made for, and the trust store where the certificates are stored. Furthermore, this list can be filtered by individual PLCs. More PLCs at a time is possible, of course, too. You can also refresh this view and get the latest status on the certificates. If a PLC is offline, the automation server automatically recognizes this and gives you a notification. If you want to create additional certificates on one or even several PLCs at once, you can do this with the automation server too. Simply select a use case for which you want to create the certificate, and the automation server automatically detects which use cases are available on which devices. Then specify the validity period and the key length. You get an overview of all the PLCs on which the certificate for the selected use case will be generated, and then just hit the Create Certificate button. Certificates that are already available on PLCs can be transferred from the PLCs to your client for further examination. You can also choose an encoding format for the transferred certificates. Another thing that's possible with the certificate management is to move certificates between trust stores. So as you can see in these screenshots, all those 4 certificates are currently located in the own trust store and will be moved to the untrusted level by hitting this move button. In the list view you've seen in the beginning, it's also possible to filter by trust levels. So you only can see those certificates you're interested in that have the trust level you're interested in. So all in all, with this certificate management, we created a comprehensive solution which gives you a perfect overview of all the existing certificates on the connected devices, PLCs and edge gateways. And the solution also comes along with a lot of possibilities, like for example, creating self-signed certificates on one or even more controllers at a time. Another feature that was released with the latest version of the automation server is the possibility to enable encrypted communication of all communication paths when using the automation server. The requirement here was that every connection should be encrypted, and you all might know this view from the CODESYS development system. Typically, those 2 parts here on the right hand side are located in a company network, the edge gateway and the PLC. And in the past, this communication path here between the PLC and the edge gateway could not be encrypted when using the automation server. With the last version, that's possible now too. So optionally, you can, if you want to, encrypt this part of communication too, or you can set up the whole system. So you can simply tunnel from your PLC through the edge gateway, through the automation server, and then to your client, the CODESYS development system. To configure the encrypted communication, we added additional functionality in the detail view of a PLC. The journey starts when you want to test the encrypted communication. Here you can check whether the necessary certificates are already available on the selected PLC or not. So you get different results for this check. If the certificates are not available yet, you can perform a quick setup, which helps you in a guided way through all the necessary steps. In a first step, the automation server tries to retrieve the necessary certificates that are used for the encrypted communication. If no certificates are found, the automation server will automatically create the necessary certificate. So in this case, a certificate was found or newly created. And in the next step, simply hit the Enable Encrypted Communication, and the certificate will also be transferred to the corresponding edge gateway. Then in the last step, just save the configuration and the encrypted communication is enabled. If the test for encrypted communication is positive and the certificate is already available, simply mark this checkbox for encrypted communication, hit the Save Configuration button, and then your communication path between Edge Gateway and PLC is encrypted. In the list view, this also can be seen, indicated by these icons here, and furthermore also in the list view the encrypted communication can be enabled and also the quick setup can be performed for multiple PLCs at once. In the Edge Gateway overview, it's also possible to force encrypted communication via a certain Edge Gateway by simply enabling this checkbox here. So that means every PLC that is connected to the automation server using this Edge Gateway will have to use an encrypted communication. So with this new feature, with this new solution, it's really easy to enable an encrypted communication without having to dive too deep into all the certificate management that's connected with this encrypted communication. And furthermore, you can also perform several bulk operations for multiple devices at once, which makes it really comfortable. Another user experience improvement that will come with the next version of the automation server in April 2025 is that in the visualization tab, web visualizations that are available on the selected PLCs are directly shown and listed, so you can very easily with only a click navigate to the corresponding visualizations and remotely access them in your browser. Another upcoming feature with the next version is that we will release the scripting documentation for the automation server connector, so you can easily use scripts to perform certain actions in the development system, for example transferring projects between the automation server and the development system, or to configure edge gateways and proxies if there are any. So this makes the automation server and the tooling in the CODESYS development system even more powerful when you're using scripting. Another big feature that will come with the next version of the automation server is the possibility to handle certificate signing requests, CSRs. So the requirement there was that it should be possible in an easy way to create signing requests for one or multiple PLCs at once, and if possible also for several use cases at once. And for this purpose we added another entry here at the security section saying signing requests, and here you have the possibility to create new signing requests. For this purpose you simply select a couple of PLCs. Up here you select a use case or several use cases for which you want to create certificate signing requests on the corresponding PLCs. In the last step you get an overview of the PLCs on which the signing requests will be generated. You simply hit this Add Signing Requests button, and in the last step you can transfer those signing requests from the corresponding PLCs to a client and then give them to a certification authority to sign certificates accordingly. Once certificate signing requests are available on the PLCs, they're all listed here in this overview, giving you additional details, for example the file name of the signing request or for which use case the signing request was created. Of course, you can also filter this list by individual PLCs. Several PLCs at once is possible too, and if you want to transfer the certificate signing requests you can also choose an encoding format before then transferring the signing requests from the PLCs to your client. Of course, it's also possible to delete signing requests on the PLCs in case you don't need them anymore. So the solution we created here in the automation server is a very comprehensive solution, giving you the possibility to perform several CSR related actions at once with multiple PLCs for multiple use cases, which makes the handling of the signing requests much more comfortable, and also together hand in hand with the feature of the certificate management makes it easy to have properly officially signed certificates distributed among your desired PLCs. Thanks a lot for your attention and enjoy the new features of the CODESYS automation server. That's it from my side. Let's move on to the next agenda point.
Hello, my name is Andreas Kehrer. I'm a product manager for the runtime and safety products.
In my presentation today for the CODESYS Runtime System SDK, I want to start with the discontinuations. First of all, I want to start with the OPCDA server, which we want to discontinue. We will shift it to the service phase at the 1st of April 2025, and we will discontinue it at the 1st of April 2027. Here I want to point out that you can find all information on our product lifecycle on our website. I want to continue with the improvements which we've done with SP21. Here I want to start with the PLC handler, where we support Windows ARM64 based platforms. As a next feature, we've now the support of the musllibc for our runtime system SDK instead of the glibc. With a smaller improvement, but it changes the default of the CODESYS gateway. When you install a gateway, now on default only local access to the gateway is allowed. Only if you allow it during the installation, a remote access to the gateway is possible. As a next feature, the IC task start offset, which I've mentioned in the last feature briefing already, is now released with SP21. The IC task start offset allows you to configure the offset of the IC task. With this feature, you can synchronize IC tasks with other IC tasks or with external tasks so that a better real-time behavior is possible. As a next feature, we've a more resilient implementation of the follow-up time for runtime licenses. So a single license loss does not lead to a loss of the follow-up time of the licenses. The follow-up time is the time which the licensing is, or the runtime is still licensed even if licenses are not available anymore. As a next feature, we have now a password policy implemented. The password policy allows you to configure the required strengths of passwords for the runtime systems. Then our runtime system supports the usage of XTP, for example, for the Intel i225 or i226 network interfaces. And last but not least, we have the user management backend based on PAM, which allows you to connect the runtime system user management with the operating system user management. And we also have improvements which we will release with the patch 1. And here we have the consistent retained behavior for virtual PLCs. So we've implemented a double buffer system based on files, which allows also to have consistent retains for virtual PLCs. There's one thing missing, and this is the independent release of the runtime system SDK. We had to postpone it. We do not release it with the SP21, but we postponed it to the SP22. Now I have two special topics I want to talk about, and one is the application-based licenses. With SP21, we fully support the application-based licenses. Application-based licenses are licenses which are not based on the hardware performance, but on the performance of the used CODESYS features. All the application-based licenses are implemented as network licenses, so they are suitable for traditional PLCs as well as virtual PLCs. As I mentioned before, the license checks are more resilient, so even the loss of network connections do not influence the licensing of virtual PLCs or the network licenses, so the license checks are more resilient. And we also support time-limited demo and test licenses. So the application-based licenses itself are, of course, not time-limited, but test and demo licenses are now available, which you can use for your runtime system. And the next topic I want to talk about is the redundancy, where we did a lot of improvements for the SP21. And one of these improvements is a new data sync interface, which allows to do acyclic data synchronization. Then we did quite a few performance improvements for the redundancy. And there is a new cyclic synchronization of selected data in special areas. So we have data areas inside of the runtime system, and the runtime system automatically synchronizes the whole data area. And we have additional features planned for SP22. And there we have the synchronization of files, of settings, of user, and of certificates. As next information, I want to give you an outlook for the implementations which we plan for SP22. And as a first thing, we plan to do a process certification with the TÜV Süd for the 62443 4-1 standard. Then we plan quite a few features to fulfill the 62443 4-2 standard, which is is related to the product but not for the process. We plan to improve the handling of the certificates, and here most of it is the certificate signing request which we want to implement for the runtime system. And we plan to provide a single licensing for device vendors too. Now, right now we just have it for the SL products, but we also want to provide it for the OEM runtime systems which are used by the device vendor. And last but not least, what I mentioned before already, we still plan to release the independent release cycle for the runtime system SDK, independent from CODESYS Essentials. Should be also done with SP22. In my presentation today for CODESYS Safety, I want to cover two topics. One is the CODESYS Safety Seal 2 product, and the other one are the CODESYS Safety Seal 3 products. Let's start with the CODESYS Safety Seal 2. Here we have planned a new release based on CODESYS version 3.5 SP21. I have to say that we have skipped the last service pack. But now in the new version, we want to have a full support of the PC Open safety function blocks version 2.0. We have done a comprehensive revision of the integration manual. We have updated our internal tool chains to do a quicker and more efficient release that allows us to have more releases a year. And finally, we have done some bug fixes for major and minor bugs. Let's come to the next product, the CODESYS Safety Extension version 4.3. In this version, we support our new product, the CODESYS Virtual Safe Control SL, and this release is planned for March this year. We have planned another version of the CODESYS Safety Extension, and in this version, we plan to support CODESYS Git with CODESYS Safety projects. This release is planned for December this year. Let's come to our new product, the CODESYS Virtual Safe Control SL. Here I have to say that this product is now certified by the TÜV Süd. We received the certificate in January this year. And here I have to say that the certificate states the model CODESYS Safe Control Core, which is the core of the Virtual Safe Control SL product, which is certified and executes all the safe runtime system code. For that release, for the Safe Control Core, we have planned additional improvements for this year. And one of these improvements are the support of ARM64 based devices. We also plan the support of FSOE Master. We plan to support external libraries so that you can extend the functionality of the Safe PLC. And finally, we want to provide the Safe Control Core as a product also for device vendors.
Thank you, Andreas Kehrer. We proceed with the next presentation.
Hello, my name is Domenik Vögel. I'm Product Manager for the CODESYS Control-SL runtime products. Today I would like to talk about our new features relating to the Control-SL deploy tool and virtual safe control. I will also introduce a few minor improvements and new products, but at first I will start with the deploy tool. With the release of SL version 4.14 in December last year, we completely overhauled the deploy tool. It is now a central mechanism for rolling out runtime and auxiliary packages to target devices. We also migrated all SL products into the tool, so there are no more separate deploy mechanisms for each individual runtime. It features intelligent detection of the packages supported by the target device and also offers an overview and management possibility of all installed services and images. The user interface is split into 3 tabs. In the first one, communication, one can connect to the target via SSH and read the CODESYS relevant device information such as operating system, container engine and available package mechanisms. In the second tab, deployment, users can roll out their required CODESYS products onto the target in the desired version. There's also an overview of all installed packages and images, of course in their respective version. Finally, there's the Operations tab, in which installed packages can be operated and new instances of images can be created and configured. Most of you probably already heard about it in the last couple of months, and now it is finally released. The CODESYS Virtual Safe Control SL. The Virtual Safe Control makes it possible to implement hardware-independent, SIL-free safety solutions. The necessary dual-channel architecture is not implemented in hardware as usual, but in software using a process developed by our partner Silistra. This means that common standard hardware can be turned into a safe control system with CODESYS Virtual Safe Control. After receiving the TÜV certificate for our development at the beginning of the year, we were able to release the Virtual Safe Control based on SL version 4.14 and the underlying Safe Control Core in January of this year. The safe runtime is available in both a native and a containerized version. Deployment and setup is of course also carried out in the Control-SL deploy tool, as is standard now for all our SL runtimes. Concerning the engineering of this new safety solution, there are no new tools necessary. As usual, you can still use the standard CODESYS IDE and work in the same fashion as you would with standard safety solutions. The performance of the Virtual Safe Control is also very promising. We tested the runtime with standard hardware and about 50 simulated Profinet slaves and achieved cycle times of around 2 milliseconds. Most of you have certainly followed the transition of the business model away from hardware-based licensing to our new application-based license model. We are also relying on this new model with the Virtual Safe Control, and we added a few new safety licenses that differ in terms of the number of safe connections. There is also a special ProfiSafe license for Fieldbus communication. Currently, the Virtual Safe Control can be used on x86-based devices in combination with ProfiSafe. However, we are also working on a solution for ARM-based devices and, of course, FSOE support. We expect to release these functionalities at the end of the year or early next year. If you are interested in a consultation or demo of the Virtual Safe Control, you are, of course, welcome to contact us during this event or get in touch with our sales team directly. Other improvements we are currently working on. There's been a long-standing problem with the support of the GPIOs of the Raspberry Pi 5, which we have been able to fix and will release a solution with SL version 4.15 at the beginning of April. For our Control Linux SL runtimes, we are also working on support for the Red Hat Package Manager, which will be supported from version 4.15 onwards. And in addition, we want to increase security by removing generic root rights from our runtime products. We are aiming for a release with version 4.16 here. And in the future, we want to further extend our Red Hat support by also supporting the universal base image for our virtual control. Another new development planned for version 4.16 is the release of a dedicated runtime specifically for UOS products of our partner Weidmuller. To conclude, a few words about planned collaborations with technology partners. Due to the Cyber Resilience Act, we see an increased need among our customers to rely on professionally maintained firmware. We are therefore planning to expand our store offering in the direction of device firmware and are relying on well-known products here. On the one hand, this includes professional Linux distributions such as Ubuntu and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and on the other hand, hypervisor products such as the RTS hypervisor and the CODESYS RTOSvisor. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Good job, Domenik Vögel. Let's proceed with the next topic.
Hello, my name is Stefan Ambros. I'm responsible for the CODESYS visualization. Today I show you the latest developments in this area.
Today I will inform you about the new features and improvements of the visualization. I would like to start with the performance optimizations for the target visual overlay. If you are not yet familiar with the target visual overlay, I would like to briefly explain the features again. With the target visual overlay, client animations such as flying in of a menu or an animated opening of dialogues are possible. Dialogues can be moved and the last position used is remembered. It has been shown that some optimizations are still possible, which we have implemented for the CODESYS version 3.5 Service Pack 21. These are: we have optimized the drawing of background images, client elements are created faster and cached, special elements for special functions such as static and client animated elements has also brought an improvement. With these optimizations, we were able to achieve that the visualization changes are executed twice as fast. We have also implemented the functionality of scrollable frames for the target visual overlay for multitouch. For elements with tab function, the touch down is executed immediately. On all other elements, the scroll function can be started with touch down. Next, I would like to show extensions in the web visualization area. An important topic here is access protection via a login page, so that you don't always have to re-enter the credentials. It can be stored in the browser password manager. With a new option, Store Credentials in Browser, these stored credentials can be used to enable automatic login. Another topic is the use of WebSocket technology for communication between web server and web client. With this technology, the transmission of the HTTP header is not necessary, resulting in a lower network load. Data traffic only takes place in the event of changes, such as a new value of an IC variable. We are also making improvements to the visualization dialogues. Dialogues, such as numpad keypad, will also be able to be operated simultaneously with the keyboard. It will also be possible to provide different keyboard layouts for different languages. We ourselves will offer some ready-made keyboard layouts. Furthermore, we will offer new dialogues for different data types. Here you can see the keypad with an international layout. And here you can see a color dialog where you can configure a color value. Further improvements have been made in the area of alarms and trends. Using alarm group templates, it is possible to define alarm conditions for a type such as a function block. All instances of this type are then monitored for the alarms automatically. With the next version, Visualization 4.8, a new observation type, Alarm API, can be used. This is characterized by the fact that the active and inactive state of an alarm can be set directly by the function block. As an example, I will show you two methods of a function block, how this API can be used. The first method is activate alarm. The API method calls activate alarm instance with a sys pointer from the current instance and the ID from the alarm, which should be activated. Here you can see the method for deactivate alarm instance. In this way, a function block can monitor and trigger the alarms itself. A major advantage is that the alarms are triggered in the task where the function block instance is called. The timestamps then show the exact sequence of the alarm sequence within the application. As a further improvement, large amounts of historical data from the trend or the alarm history can be loaded in blocks to reduce CPU load. The visualization also remains operable during loading. The last topic is about the display options for date and time values. It was already possible to specify a format string for the output of date time values. The format string can now come from a text list, which means that the different format strings can be provided for different languages. For all timestamps that appear in the visualization, it is possible to display the time offset information of the time zone. A new feature is that the time zone can be changed by the user at runtime, and the display is adapted in all elements such as the alarm table, in the trend, or in the datetime picker. The timestamps are always saved in UTC time and can be displayed in relation to the set time zone. These were the new features from the visualization.
Thank you, Stefan Ambros. Let's continue with the next topic.
I would like to give you an overview of the new features for CODESYS of Motion. All features that I present today will be available with CODESYS of Motion version 4.18, which we release in April 2025. This update includes new features for basic motion, like additional cam segments and automatic reinitialization of drives, as well as improvements to robotics. Let's start with basic motion and cams. Before I present the new cam features, I want to introduce what a cam is. A cam can be used when two axes should move in a defined relation to each other. We call these two axes master and slave. For each position of a master axis, there is a corresponding position of the slave axis. The relation between the master and the slave position is described by different segments, which in the end are mathematical functions. The cam on this slide has 4 different segments, and each segment can have a different mathematical function. The slave axis will follow the path defined by these segments. And this represents a cam. With soft motion 418, we add two new segment types: the inclined sign and the modified sign. The inclined sign requires velocity 0 at both boundaries, so it can only be used for movements from standstill to standstill, so-called dwell-dwell movements. In contrast, the modified sign allows setting different velocities at both boundaries. In addition, the shape can be fine-tuned using the inflection point parameter lambda or the maximum deceleration parameter CA star. The new segment types can be used with both the CAM editor in the IDE and with the CAM Builder API. To visualize cams in your user interface, we added new elements to view or edit cams. First, we start with the cam displayer. In the cam displayer, you can view the cam including all derivatives. The different values can be shown or hidden as desired. This is especially useful for cams that have been created programmatically. Next, we have the cam editor. This element can be used to change cams during runtime in the visualization. You can load the cam, select a segment, create new segments or delete them, change boundary values, and change the segment type. Finally, you can save the cam and use it in your application. The next feature is a high-precision digital cam switch. Let's take a look at the following example. We have an axis moving from position 0 to 360. We want to apply glue to a product starting at position 90 and ending at 120. Since the glue gun has a delay between activation and actually dispensing glue on the product, we want to enable the glue gun 50 milliseconds before we reach position 90 and disable the glue gun 50 milliseconds before reaching position 120. We already have two function blocks to solve this problem, namely MC Digital Cam Switch and SMC Get Travel Time. However, both have disadvantages for this application. The accuracy of MC Digital Cam Switch is one Fieldbus cycle. There is no information on the time within a cycle at which the output should be switched on or off. This problem could be solved by SMC Get Travel Time, which has sub-cycle accuracy. However, for our example, we wanted to enable and disable the glue gun 50 milliseconds before reaching the position. And with SMC Get Travel Time, this on and off compensation needs to be done manually in the application code. Both disadvantages are solved with the new SMC Digital Cam Switch High Precision function block. Let's look at the glue gun output versus the time. On the x-axis, you can see the time in form of Fieldbus cycles. The glue gun output should be enabled toward the end of cycle n and disabled near the end of cycle n+2. MC Digital Cam Switch would enable the output for the whole cycle n and disable it at the start of cycle n+2. For some applications, this might not be precise enough. For applications that require this level of precision, SMC Digital Cam Switch High Precision can be used together with a high precision digital output card. As you can see, it is possible to activate the glue gun with a sub-cycle time accuracy. Even with higher PLC cycle times, you can precisely control the outputs. Next, I want to talk about the automatic initialization of the soft motion axis. Let's consider a case where the slave has an error. This also leads to an error for the soft motion axis. When you have enabled an automatic restart of your slaves, the slave will restart and return to operational. Previously, you then had to use re-init drive to reset the soft motion axis. Now, the soft motion axis also automatically restarts after the slave becomes operational again. Another case is when the device is initially disabled. When both devices get enabled, first the slave becomes operational. Re-init drive is no longer necessary to initialize the soft motion axis, and instead the axis automatically performs the initialization. In summary, for these cases, it is no longer necessary to use the re-init drive function block. Now let's switch to robotics and our improved aborting. An aborting movement is used for immediately changing the ongoing movement of a robot. A use case could be to change the target position of the active movement. This can be seen in the video. We have a SCARA robot which performs two movements. The first movement is highlighted in blue and the aborting movement in orange. In this example, the robot moves along a straight line. The graph on the right displays the same movement as in the video. The X and Y axis are the X and Y coordinates in the machine coordinate system. The first movement was commanded from X position 200 to 375. The aborting movement was commanded at X position 260 and changed the target position to 350. Let's look on how this movement changed with soft motion 418. You can see the movement of soft motion 417 highlighted in red and the improved movement of soft motion 418 highlighted in green. With soft motion 417, the movement stopped, moved nearly back to the X position where the aborting movement was commanded, and then continued to the target position. This is now solved with soft motion 418, where we continue moving and just stop at the target position. Next, we have a similar case as before. The difference is that the aborting movement is commanded later and that the new target position is not far away from the actual robot position. With the given dynamic limits of this movement, it is not possible to reach standstill at the new target position. And instead, the robot will overshoot this position and then needs to move back. As before, with soft motion 417, the movement comes nearly back to the position where the aborting movement was commanded. With soft motion 418, the robot just moves back to the target position and stops. Lastly, I want to talk about improved logging. First, you can set custom names for your movements. And for certain errors, we now log additional information. For example, this is a log message when an axis would move outside of the position limits. Besides the error text, you now also get the following information: the axis position which caused this error, the position limits of the axis, the custom movement name, and the instance path. This will make it easier for you to identify and fix errors in the application. Thanks for your attention and enjoy the new features of CODESYS SoftMotion.
Thanks for updating us. Let's come to the next presentation.
Hello, my name is Hilmar Panzer. I'm Managing Director and CTO at CODESYS and Product Manager for Fieldbuses.
From Service Pack 21 onwards, devices that have a bus cycle task are specially marked in the device tree. The tasks that work as bus cycle tasks also receive the same decoration, these two small blue circular arrows. A bus cycle task is important because this is where the exchange with the physical I/Os takes place. If an incorrect bus cycle task is set, the variables are updated unsynchronized and often at the wrong time. This is a problem that we regularly encounter in our customer support. We hope that this marker will enable the user to recognize more quickly whether the setting is set correctly. It can be changed in the tab I/O mapping for the respective device or globally in the device's PLC settings. Then we have decided to tackle a major topic in the area of devices and field buses: online change for devices and device settings. This requires some far-reaching changes to the device concept and will probably only be available in Service Pack 22, that means in 2026. For now, we are concentrating on the drivers for the local I/Os, then on Profinet. I will keep you informed about this. CAN-FD has now been implemented as a CODESYS communication protocol between the programming and the runtime system. The changes have been made in the essentials part of CODESYS and in the runtime system. They can be used with Service Pack 21. The final release, which also includes convenient editing of the gateway settings, will be done with Service Pack 22 next year. You can also use Layer 2 communication with CAN-FD in your application. However, there are currently no plans to support FD in our CAN-Open solution. For CAN-Open, we've released a new version in January, which mainly contained bug fixes. We are also currently working intensively on Modbus. A particular focus is on redundancy issues. We will be supporting network redundancy in the next version around the middle of the year. The precondition for this feature is that the server devices, formerly called slaves, are able to establish two connections to the client. The client, formerly called master, switches to the other if one of the connections is lost. This allows the operation of the devices to be maintained if one of the communication paths fails. You can specify a preferred connection and in the application use function blocks to monitor the status. In addition, integration into our CPU redundancy product, CODESYS Redundancy, will be implemented. Mr. Kehrer has already talked about redundancy in the Runtime SDK presentation. In contrast to the network redundancy just discussed, this involves a second redundant controller that can replace the primary controller immediately after its failure. Modbus can be used as another supported field bus when we have done this implementation. The following maintenance versions will be released in the next few weeks: Profibus 4.2 and NetX 4.1 with some bug fixes. Now on Profinet. In November, we released a version that supports the certificate test version 2.45, which was a prerequisite for the certification of our virtual controls. In addition, an interface for ProfiSafe diagnostics was introduced. Also worth mentioning are the new blocks for reading and writing identification and maintenance entries. A version 4.7 is planned for the middle of the year with some fixes and the following changes when importing GSDML files. In some special cases, for example with tool-generated files, the device IDs were not unique. Due to the duplicate IDs, previously installed variants of the GSDMLs were overwritten when a new variant was installed. Now the GSDML import generates different and more unique device IDs. As a result, old projects can report missing device descriptions even though the GSDMLs are already installed, but can no longer be automatically mapped due to the new ID. In these cases, the user must simply update the devices manually to the newly installed version of the GSDML. By the end of the year, we want to provide a topology editor that gives a graphical overview of the network. In addition to I/O devices, this will also include infrastructure devices such as switches and a representation of the Ethernet ports. It will be possible to perform a network scan in order to build up an initial network map with all the devices found. The states of the devices and connections are displayed in an online mode. The automatic generation of a visualization to be integrated into the user interface is also planned. We will also support dynamic reconfiguration, a Profinet feature that allows fast, smooth switching to a new configuration and which we will need as the basis for the previously mentioned online change capability of the device tree. CODESYS EtherCAT is also always improving. In January, version 4.9 was released, which supports special IO-Link master gateways. In February, a patch was released for version 4.8, which fixes a special bug in the context of SOE, so servo drive over EtherCAT. A version with further improvements will be released in the third quarter at the latest. Finally, Ethernet IP. A new editor in the scanner configurator is planned for mid of this year, which will provide an overview of all connections and allow their editing even in bulk mode. We also want to expand the interfaces for asynchronous services in the adapter so that they also enable acyclical provision of data. Currently, the data must be provided immediately, that means in the same call. If the data has to be fetched from somewhere else first, for example from a file, this is not possible as this would destroy the real-time property. For this extension, we make it possible to provide a response a few cycles later. That was it for the field buses. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Hilmar, Panzer. Let's move on with the agenda.
Hello, I'm Kevin Ketterle. Today I'm speaking in my role as Product Manager of CODESYS Go. This is the new web-based programming system which will be available soon. And what soon actually means, stay tuned.
First of all, a reminder. CODESYS Go is a new generation of the CODESYS programming system. It is a client-server application and allows operation not only as a classic desktop application, but also as a server-based and centralized multi-user environment, as well as directly on a controller. In the latter two cases, you no longer need a local installation on your development computer, but connect to the server or controller using a web browser. CODESYS Go is not yet a released product. I will now briefly present the current state of development. We have succeeded in converting an existing source library from our product portfolio from binary version 3 to the new text-based Go format and creating a compiled library that can be used in both generations. This process runs in our internal build pipelines, which we also use for product releases of all kinds. We have thereby proven the viability of some new CODESYS Go concepts. For example, projects are stored in a new directory structure based on individual text files, as you are familiar with from other high-level languages such as C# or TypeScript. In particular, this facilitates the use of version management systems such as Git and access to project data using external tools. In addition, CODESYS Go will offer all important functions as command-line commands right from the start. This makes the system ideal for automated build environments. Libraries, on the other hand, remain compatible with CODESYS version 3. We use the same compiled library format without any restrictions. In addition, our application team, who are power users of our own products, have carried out an intermediate validation of the current status of CODESYS Go. This helps us to improve things that are not yet working optimally or are missing in time for the initial release. As a result, we are quite advanced in the areas of library management and structured text. We have developed a configuration concept and a corresponding preference editor to adapt the new programming system. We will use this year to expand the development of CODESYS Go from our small core team into the respective specialist teams. For example, the development team responsible for the ladder diagram editor in CODESYS version 3 has also started porting this editor to CODESYS Go. The situation is similar for the Fieldbuses. In line with the overall concept of CODESYS Go, the task here is also to create a textual and human-readable storage format for each Fieldbus and to bind it to the existing Fieldbus stacks. The familiar configuration editors will be based on this. We started with EtherCAT together with the Fieldbus team. Our fears that this Fieldbus could not be ported within a year due to its complexity proved to be true, so we will leave it at a subset. In order to verify the overall concept at all levels, we have turned to Modbus, which is much simpler in terms of content and also has a broad application base in the field. CODESYS Go will also have a modular structure. All features will be provided in the form of extensions, which will be developed either by us or by third-party providers. We are working intensively on the necessary software architecture. And last but not least, a lot of work is being put into making the system highly scalable and platform independent in various forms, from the PLC to the desktop to the centralized multi-user environment as promised.
Thanks, Kevin Ketterle.
That was it for the Feature Briefing Spring 2025. Thank you very much for your attention. We hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you again in October. Bye-bye.